What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. It is such a good time to be a hunter right now. With the addition of the new seasonal artifact, solar and strained builds have seen such a tremendous improvement in their performances. The Celestial Nighthawk solar build might be one of the most lethal of those. But that's not the build that we're talking about today, because in Season of the Wish, the Revenant Stasis subclass has also seen its own major improvements, which have in turn revitalized a one-time overpowered Revenant build, which features the Renewal GRASP. And in Season of the Wish, this is one of the most underrated builds that hunters have the option of. But it's one of the most durable builds that will provide you and allies with a ton of ongoing survivability benefits that will help you get through the toughest of encounters. After Stasis Overshields and Resistance saw a nerf a couple of seasons ago, Stasis builds had become pretty useless, at least in general. But even when times were tough, the Renewal GRASP still made for an amazing build, and it's never been better than it is right now. The Renewal GRASP provide the intrinsic trait called Depths of the Duskfield. This causes the radius of Duskfield grenades to be 25% larger. This will help trap more enemies within the field to cause slow and freezing effects. But the Renewal GRASP will also provide damage resistance while inside the radius of the Duskfield grenade. And this is an effect that is shared with teammates. So when you throw down your Duskfield grenade, enemies who are within the field will deal 50% less damage, even after the crystal is shattered. And when you and allies are within the Duskfield radius, you'll receive a ×3 resistance buff that lasts 6 seconds, providing 25% reduced damage. This can be an asset that you can utilize from a distance, or when in close quarter combat. And it actually works out the best when you and the enemy are able to both be inside the Duskfield grenade. So this facilitates a much more aggressive playstyle and weapon loadout, which should include shotguns, grenade launchers, swords, and glaives. And it's actually a sword that is my most recommended exotic to use with this build. Intrinsically, a Revenant hunter has the ability of stunning Overload and unstoppable champions, but they can only delay a barrier champion from popping a shield, which is where the Lament comes in, because it intrinsically pierces barrier shields. And it's one of the strongest up-close weapons in Destiny, which means that it will have the most to gain from the bonus resistance that you'll have, along with the reduced damage that your enemies will deal. And what's even more harmonious about this synergy is that the Lament will provide you with health back, as it grants 10 points of health on every hit. The Lament isn't always going to be the main exotic that you'll want to run with the Renewal GRASP, since there are a number of Nightfall, dungeon, and raid encounters that call for a more distanced approach, which would call for some of the other weapons that we'll talk about here soon, like the Vergless Curve or the Wicked Implement. The Renewal GRASP offer additional benefits when we have the Touch of Winter aspect equipped. This will cause the size of the Stasis Crystal to increase, making it a much more efficient source of cover. The overall size of the Duskfield radius will also be increased by an extra 50%, pushing these out to around 8 meters in overall radius. On initial impact, enemies will start taking continuous stacks of slow until they freeze, where they'll start the cycle all over again. The slowing effect caused by Duskfield grenades will last a total of 9 seconds. The most amazing thing about the Renewal GRASP in Season of the Wish is that the increase to the grenade recharge time has been removed, leaving the base cooldown of Duskfield grenades at 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is something that we have every intent on reducing as much as possible. To go along with Touch of Winter, we're using Grim Harvest. This provides us with 3 fragment slots instead of 2, and it will cause stasis shards to be created when we defeat slowed and frozen enemies. Intrinsically, these shards are going to provide us with 10% melee energy on each small shard, and 50% on the big ones. The creation of these shards will be paramount towards our ability to trigger the Whisper of Rhyme fragment, which is going to grant health and an overshield when collecting stasis shards. Each small shard will start granting 5 points of HP, with larger shards providing 35 points. Once you've reached full health, these shards will create an overshield, deflecting 50 points of damage. It's not as much as it once was, but this fragment is still a marvelous addition to a build that's already given us increased damage resistance and reduced enemy damage. And just as important of a fragment to use, we've got Whisper of Chains equipped. When we are near frozen enemies, or a friendly crystal, we'll gain an additional 40% damage resistance. This stacks right on top of the 25% resistance that we'll have from Renewal GRASPS, which will put us at a minimum of 65% reduced damage whenever we're next to our Duskfield crystal, with 40% resistance when we're next to any other crystal. And since we're using Whisper of Shards, whenever we shatter those crystals, we'll gain a 500% increase in the recharge rate of our grenades. This lasts 6 seconds, but it can be extended by breaking additional crystals. Whisper of Shards, along with Whisper of Torment, will really help maximize our ability to have Duskfield grenades as often as possible. With Whisper of Torment, whenever we take damage of any kind, we'll receive 5% grenade energy, and that's going to get applied once every second. And when we become critically wounded, that will be increased to 10%, which is getting restored once every second, as long as we're getting shot at, providing us with a ton of extra grenade energy. The last fragment that we're using is Whisper of Conduction, and it's partially because I'm lazy and I hate running around to find stasis shards. And it's much more time efficient to just have the shards do it for you. Plus you'll get 10 extra points of resilience and 10 extra points of intellect, helping you fill up that super bar faster. If you don't mind running around to gather these shards, might I suggest utilizing Whisper of Impetus, so that whenever you use a charged melee, your equipped weapon will be reloaded. So now that we've addressed our Revenant subclass, let's talk about the new seasonal artifact, and the mods that are going to amplify what we're already working with. The big three are Pillar of Ice, Dragon's Bite, and Hail the Storm, and these all perform the best when they're all three equipped at the same time. When we defeat frozen combatants, they will spawn their own smaller stasis crystal, capable of triggering our resistance bonus, providing makeshift cover, and giving us another way to damage more enemies. And with Dragon's Bite, when we break opponent's shield with stasis weapons, those enemies have a chance of becoming instantly frozen, and capable of creating their own crystals once they are defeated. And with Hail the Storm, when we shatter these frozen enemies, the damage dealt is going to be increased, and when crystals are shattered, tiny little shards are going to track down nearby enemies, causing them to become slowed, continuing this cycle of never-ending stasis effects. We're also utilizing Wished into Being, so whenever we are close to having our super energy full, ability final blows will create orbs, generating 3 at a time. This will get triggered when you have about 25% energy left, so it's going to be a great way to help get that super faster, and it's going to help generate bonus orbs to fuel different armor mods that we'll talk about here soon. When we are solo, we are using Solo Operative, so that we'll gain 15% bonus ability and weapon damage, but if we're in a team activity, we're free to use a different artifact mod. When we do take the Lament off and use a rocket launcher, like the Cold Comfort, we definitely want to take advantage of the Argent Ordnance mod, so that we'll gain an extra 15% damage to each rocket when an armor charge is consumed. Blast Radius will also be a great mod with or without a rocket launcher, because when we use grenade launchers, like the Lingering Dread or the Forbearance, we'll generate armor charges when rapidly defeating enemies. Armor charges that could fuel armor mods, like Emergency Reinforcement, to provide us with an extra source of damage resistance. Or weapon surges, to give the Lament or any stasis weapon we're using a boost in damage. But what we need these armor charges for is Grenade Kickstart. This is going to take armor charges and convert them into grenade energy whenever we throw our grenade. The more armor charges used, the more energy. And since we're using 2 grenade kickstarts, a charged up chest mod, and a stacks on stacks boots mod, we'll have up to 4 armor charges to use, granting us a 6 stack of energy, which will grant us 41% energy that's getting instantly restored. And since we're getting all that additional energy from Whisper of Shards and Whisper of Torment, we'll be able to have our Duskfield grenade within seconds. We're also using Bomber and Innervation mods, which are going to provide grenade energy when performing our dodge and when collecting orbs. We'll be able to generate additional orbs with the use of Siphon Helmet mods and the Reaper class item mod. And with those additional orbs getting generated, we'll be able to have an extra source of health recovery, since we're also using the Recuperation Boots mod. So between all of the resistance bonuses, the reduced damage that our enemies will deal, and all the regeneration that our abilities will have, we're looking at an extremely indestructible Revenant build. And all that's left is deciding on what weapons to take with you. When looking at kinetic weapons, we really want a stasis weapon that comes with Headstone or Chill Clip so that we can trigger those artifact mods and stasis fragments. The Lingering Dread grenade launcher or a stasis fusion rifle like the Deliverance or Riptide would really be the best options. Weapons with Demolitionist will also come in handy since they'll generate additional grenade energy. We've talked about the Lament, but another exotic heavy choice that would work out really well with this build would be the Winterbite. It does a ton of damage with its charged up blast, and it can really deal some damage with its melee attacks, but it is hindered by its low ammo reserves. So we've also got legendary options like the Zephyr Sword, which can drop with Cold Steel, giving us more opportunities to slow and freeze targets. There's also the Reed's Regret Linear Fusion Rifle when you're looking at a DPS option that requires you to be from a distance, or there's the aforementioned Cold Comfort, which will benefit off of Argent Ordnance. There's a few other exotics that deserve honorable mentions that are going to provide some very interesting synergy with this Revenant Hunter. The Vergless Curve creates a ton of crystals on its own, giving us more ability to trigger resistance bonuses and other abilities. The same would go for the Cryothesia or the Aegir Scepter, but between those two, I would definitely side with the Cryothesia sidearm, since it already has the ability of stunning unstoppables, and with the anti-barrier mod equipped, it will also handle barrier champions. The Wicked Implement could also be a great option, since it slows and freezes targets, and it creates shards, but I would reserve this to those situations where you're having to play from a distance. And if you're going up against a big, tanky, taken boss, like in Warlord's Ruin, the Malfeasance is definitely one of the best exotics to use. And with that folks, I think we've touched base on all the class tree choices, artifact mods, weapon choices, and variations to this outstanding Revenant Hunter build, featuring the Renewal GRASP, a perfect build during Season of the Wish. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian, just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.